Welcome to the Purple Sky Thinking for Leaders podcast. This podcast is for you if you lead people, teams, or the organisation. You might be a leader or a manager yourself, or you might be part of the support team to help those people to be really successful. I'm Anwen Bottois. I'm the leadership success coach and founder of Purple Sky Consulting, and I'm going to be the host for this podcast. My mission is to help as many leaders as possible to really love what they do. I want to help you to feel more confident, more capable, more effective, so that you can build and grow happy, healthy, more successful teams. This podcast is going to be all about helping you to love leading. In this new episode, I'm really delighted to be joined by Shola Kaye. Shola is a specialist in communication, inclusive leadership and empathy, and I'm really delighted to have her on this episode of the podcast. Shola does brilliant work from training, leadership development, TED Talks, and keynote speaking as well. So she's got loads of experience that she's bringing to this fantastic conversation on empathy and leading with empathy. So let's get right into it. Welcome, Shola. Thank you for joining us on the podcast for this episode. Why don't you do a little bit of an introduction for our audience in terms of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Anwen. And my name's Shola Kaye, and I am a keynote speaker and a trainer, and I'm also an author. And the areas that I work in are empathy, communication, and leadership.
Love that. And you're going to be perfect for our audience today on that basis, because that's one of the topics we're going to be talking about is empathy and the opportunities and the joy of empathy as a leader. So I'm really looking forward to us getting into that. For our listeners, we love to ask our guests about travel, because that's my little hotspot of topic and discussion. So any tips or lovely holiday destinations you've been to that you'd like to share with our audience?
Interesting question. I play tennis. So typically when I choose a destination, it's somewhere where there's tennis courts that are close by and the weather is either warm enough or, not too boiling that I can play tennis comfortably. So that said, it's quite often, I don't go too far from Europe because quite often there's plenty of courts and there's a good climate for that. I think I'm not the most adventurous traveler, shall we say, sort of, trekking through jungles or anything like that.
Either.
But I do, I particularly like to travel for work. So if I get keynote opportunities in foreign countries and places like that, I love it because it's an ability to do two things at once.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Has any location for work talks stood out for you that you particularly enjoyed getting to?
Yeah, I went to the Philippines last year, so that was really interesting. I was mainly in Manila, so I didn't get a chance to go to any of the the surrounding islands, but I really enjoyed that. I've been to San Diego a couple of times or I think 3 times now for work. And that's just certain parts of that area are really, really lovely. The weather's great. You've got the sea nearby. So I'm quite easy to please as long as there's decent weather. I'm quite happy once I'm there. A bit of sunshine.
We went to the Philippines, but only Manila as well on our travels, and that's definitely islands I want to get back to. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Really interesting city. It was I wasn't quite sure what to expect, I think, when I got there, but yeah, there were lots of really lovely modern parts and then loads of really historic parts, which obviously you get in most big cities, but there was something about the vibe of that place that I've not experienced anywhere else before. So yeah, really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So before we dive into our topic on empathy, would really love to hear a little bit about your experiences with leadership and leading. So do you mind sharing a little bit about that and also maybe what it taught you or what you learned about yourself from it?
Yeah, I mean, early on in my career, so I worked as a management consultant for a few years in a small company. It wasn't a kind of huge organization. And I remember being made a manager and I just had a very small team. And it was so interesting because a lot of the gripes that you might have about your own manager, once you become a manager, you kind of see the situations that people are in and the tough decisions. And so, I'm really grateful to have had that opportunity. And I do a bunch of leadership training now. And I often think back to those times, not only my own management experience, but also managers that I had. I mean, a kind of defining story for me was that early on I was quite a poor performer, for various reasons. I was in a foreign country. I was kind of an introvert in a very extroverted environment. Lots of excuses, and
We'll go with
and
reasons. Sure,
yeah,
reasons.
reasons. And I, with my own manager, he didn't communicate to me that he wasn't happy with my performance until one day I got put on a put on probation effectively, and kind of it was escalated to the owner and the director, well, the owner of the whole company. So I mean, that's been really helpful, that experience. It was, a bitter pill to swallow at the time,
Yeah.
but looking back, it was very helpful to me to have been through that and to see some of the things that happen, and then to kind of that has informed a lot of the ways that I train people. And the fact that empathy is so important. So yeah, had interesting experiences on both sides of the leadership line, if you like.
Lovely. Were there any key insights it kind of gave you about yourself and who you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because in part, I have a keynote that I do now, which is called How to Ask for What You Want, or it's called The Art of the Ask. And I've felt that when I had this particular manager, there was so much where I felt he should have known what I was thinking, or he should have understood my intention, or he should have just got this or got that. And everyone's busy, everyone's got things going on, people make assumptions. And especially when I talk about empathy, assumptions are kind of the enemy, if you like, of empathy. So just made me realize that sometimes you've got to speak up and ask questions, or just share, what your intentions are, and be transparent. And then that can really help. And even if it's being transparent with a leader where you think they should know, that can be incredibly useful for yourself and for them, because it flushes out a lot of issues that might have lain dormant or just affected you without you really speaking about them.
Yeah, I love that insight. That need for the assumptions is a two-way thing, isn't it? Like we're assuming that's their job. They should be capable of knowing through the crystal ball how I'm feeling about that situation right now, or what I'm lacking, or what support I need. And enabling people to come forward and ask those questions, I think, is the role of the leader, creating a space where that can happen. But you also need to not assume as an individual that your manager knows exactly what you need. Yeah,
Yeah.
really interesting. Love that. Thank you for that. So let's dive into empathy. You touched on some of the elements there. Can you talk us through a little bit about how you define empathy and why you feel it's crucial in the world we're living in, the work world we have right now?
Yeah. And I guess the classic definition of empathy is the ability to understand the feelings of another person. And I think it's so important. I mean, it's not only about feelings, it's about perspective taking. So, can you put yourself in someone's place kind of mentally in terms of how they're thinking? And I guess you can split empathy into three. So, there's the thinking part, which is taking someone's perspective. There's the feeling part, so understanding what someone feels. And then there's also the doing part, which is really linked to compassion. So, with that information about what they're thinking and feeling, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to help them? Are you going to listen to them? Are you going to support them? And so we can link that to perspective taking is the head, the feelings part is the heart, and then the hands is the compassion and the doing part. And it's almost like, if you think about the difference between being kind and being nice, I can say I'm a nice person and I haven't done anything to help anybody, but I have this perception that I'm a nice person in my head. Whereas being kind, I'm a kind person. Well, how do you show that you're kind? Well, you probably had to do something to help somebody, or, so in the same way, you can say that you're empathetic, but the first two, the perspective taking and the feeling, don't actually lead to anything productive or helpful happening. Whereas when that then finds its way into you being compassionate, even the act of listening can be really powerful, for somebody else. So I think we're so it's interesting because people now, compared to when I was young, but in the old days, but yeah, I mean, there's so much more going on now. People are sort of have got their own sources of information that they go to. The workplaces, a lot of people are working virtually, for example. Change is happening at the speed of light, change is happening so quickly. So people are under a lot of pressure, and quite often the human relationship side of things, or the understanding where someone else is coming from, that part can often break or not be as obvious as it used to be because of the range of experiences that people are having and the pressures that we're under. So, it's heartening to see that so many organizations are understanding that empathy can't be taken for granted, and people need to understand how to be empathetic, whether it's colleagues, clients, customers, whoever it is, to keep the relationships going and keep that understanding in place.
So, in terms of how that builds into why a business should take this seriously, what would you say the benefits are for the business of really investing, I guess, in a culture and environment where empathy is high? What are the benefits for productivity and the culture of the organization?
Yeah, it's interesting because as we look at the different generations, there's a much more the younger. Some people say use the word younger. The newer generation, shall we say, are much more sort of tapped into the benefits of being with an empathetic employer. So if you look at data, you'll see that, maybe boomers or Gen X, the idea of needing an empathetic workplace, it's not as necessary as it is for younger generations. And so, of course, what that means is how likely are you going to retain your people? Or how easy is it for you to recruit people if you're known to not be very empathetic, or you're not understanding in terms of the sort of range of benefits that you offer people, or even if you give people some opportunity to work from home some days, that sort of thing is incredibly important to the newer generations. So there's a massive impact on, as I say, retention, recruitment, and then productivity as well. People are more likely to stay later, and do overtime or whatever for a more empathetic employer, because people want to feel understood. They want to feel that they can make a contribution. They want to feel that their purpose aligns with the work that they're doing. And so all of those needs point to an empathetic employer being more successful than a less empathetic one.
Interesting. I love that from the angle of the colleague side of things. Interestingly, there's a lot I'm a Man United fan for my sins at the moment, and this theme plays through so much to the customer kind of that view, I think, as well. Of there's lots of stuff happening culturally at Man United at the moment, not just the performances on the pitch that are a nightmare, but we're seeing job losses, we're seeing changes to how people are being treated. And me as a customer of that organization, because I'm a fan, but I'm also a customer, I'm a season ticket holder, I feel disconnected from the place because I see how the business seems to be really lacking in care, consideration, and empathy for its people. And I'm sure that there's a connection there in terms of customer business case for actually it's not just about your people, it's about how you're treating your people and how your customers see that.
Yeah, it's so clear. I mean, if you go to a workplace and you can see disgruntled employees, it's so obvious,
Yeah.
so obvious. And then you do think twice, like, well, what's going on there? What? I didn't get a good vibe. I'll go somewhere else next time. So it does make a massive difference.
Absolutely. So why do you think some leaders struggle with it? I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced this. The ones that stick with us because actually could bring bucket loads of empathy to our working environment and our personal lives, and then the ones who really didn't. But why is it that there are some leaders that just really struggle with that?
I think it's some individuals, it could be that they just never developed much empathy when they were growing up, or they themselves, didn't experience much empathy from others, and so they haven't been able to kind of model.
Yeah.
Um, so it's that. And I think also sometimes you get people who are afraid, so they still have this view that a leader should be that kind of command and control style, and that if you do become a little bit more transparent or more vulnerable, that's a weakness rather than a strength. And I think it's important for organizations to support those leaders, whether that's through training, it could be just giving them a wake up call by saying, well, you know what, we're going to make this a part of your review process, or, look at results of poll surveys with questions like, my leader listens to me, or my leader, those sorts of questions.
Yeah.
But I think, the core skills that people need to be taught, things like curiosity, transparency, better communication skills, giving people space to express their opinion, and then also the skills to being able to be able to pull a team together. So once you've said, well, okay, I'm thinking to make this decision, what do you all think? So, giving people a chance to express themselves, then it's about, okay, so we've got these 3 or 4 different opinions in the group. I've made a decision as a leader that we're going to go in this direction, but how do I now pull everyone together so we're all moving in the same direction, rather than people feeling upset or disgruntled, or and so I think a lot of it is about communication, it's about team building, it's about collaboration. But it starts with that curiosity and giving people space to really share, and being okay with differences of opinion and differences or different ways of thinking. I just spoke before this podcast. I was doing a keynote for about 200 or 300 leaders virtually, and we were talking about empathy, and we were talking about this idea of allowing people some self-expression, because especially if you're trying to lead through change and there are people who disagree with the direction or they have their own opinions, it's so important to understand them and to show that you understand them, even if you disagree, because as their leader, it's important to hear and to get where they're coming from. And you're more likely to help people adopt change if you are transparent about the different conversations happening around it. And then, as I say, that final piece is bringing people together, rather than trying to kind of shove it all under the carpet, and then it just kind of pops out here like a resentment, or I'm not pulling in the same direction as the rest of the team. Things happen. So really, I certainly feel it's about flushing things out at the beginning, showing you understand, listening, being curious, being transparent, and then having the skills to bring everyone together.
And those things that you're talking about are things that people can learn to do, aren't they? This isn't developing empathy for your, with your team, with your organization, isn't just about you've got it naturally in your DNA. Of course, there are some people that are going to be more tuned into that because, like you say, they've grown up like that. It might be part of their DNA to behave in that way, but these things can be learnt, can't they, from that? So before we talk a little bit about, I'd love to get your thoughts in terms of the impact of empathy on creating a more inclusive working environment. Before we get into that, what would be your advice for leaders who want to do that learning work around empathy and practicing empathy, without it maybe taking an emotional impact on them, because it's a shift, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a shift. And I think the first place you can start is with the perspective taking. And it's interesting because even things like watching different, TV shows than you normally watch, or watching, reading books about people in different cultures or different environments, and starting to think, okay, yeah, well, this character, how would I feel if those things happened to me as that character? Or, what would I do next as that particular character? So, I mean, if somebody doesn't really want to take risks in the workplace and they just want to kind of try this for size, they can do things like that to start
Love
with.
that.
Or even,
Yeah.
yeah, traveling, going to different places and speaking to different people and understanding that there are different ways of thinking and different, cultures. All of those things can really tie into just being open and receptive to difference, really, and then wanting to understand and ask questions to learn more.
Yeah, that curiosity piece is so valuable here, isn't it? And it applies in all types of areas, doesn't it? And I really love that bit around kind of trying it, practice it in an environment where you feel safe, so that you build your muscle around it and kind of get used to it. But I love that view of, like, put yourself in the position of the character of the film or the book or the different experience, because you're right, how often can we react in a space of, I feel threatened by that view because it's not mine, versus, actually, how do we step back? How do I just hear it, understand it, and do something valuable with that rather than react? But we have to make a decision to do that, don't we? Rather than, it's not going to just magically happen, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Suspend judgments.
Mm.
There's not worry too much about what's right or wrong, but just I'm here to learn and grow.
That conversation that you can have with your team and the people that you work with, just by having that curiosity to understand their perspective on things, is so valuable, really, really valuable. So how does that link then to more inclusive environments and cultures within organizations? What are your thoughts in terms of how empathy really can help to foster that?
Well, I think there's many ways, but I think, for example, in decision making, it's so easy to make assumptions about other groups or not even take them into account when we're making decisions. And so just taking a step back and saying, well, okay, we need to make a decision on this thing. Who are the people that would be affected? And then sort of looking at that group and saying, how would I feel if I were this other person? How would I feel if this decision was being made? So just from a very, very much taking other people's perspective and starting to see the impact of some of the things that you're doing. Because all too often, I think people don't consider, the entire group or population or whatever before they go ahead and make a decision. And there's been, obviously lots of things in the news about kind of epic fails made by companies, for example, often when they're consumer facing as well, and then
Yeah,
they get
totally.
shown up.
Yeah.
So I think definitely that kind of perspective taking can be really powerful. Or just thinking about, well, okay, we're going to make the decision. Do we have enough different voices in the room to really contribute to the direction that we're taking? Or are we starting to make tons of assumptions for other people? So again, that can be about bringing in other voices from the organization, or, trying out ideas for size before final decisions are made. So all of those things will add to feelings of inclusivity, because people will then see that they're being brought into the decision-making process, that they're being considered, etc. So just that's just one example, really.
It's a much smarter way of running your business, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially if you serve a broad customer base, or you totally want to hear from a range of different voices to make sure that you're not overlooking anything really important.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think that the way curiosity and asking those questions and considering those different perspectives and really hearing that, the value that you get as a leader, as a business, in terms of kind of having maybe the door opens to a couple of things that you weren't considering or you weren't thinking about, because you're not just putting yourself in that position, you're asking the questions as well of, what do you think if we do this? But then also being okay with what the response is to that.
Yeah. That's so important, because yeah, you can't say, well, I'm just going to ask, but as long as I can still win with my ideas, it's okay. You've got to be truly open to what comes back.
Yeah, it's and that can be hard when you're lacking in confidence if you're new into management or you're moving into a new organization or something like that. You've got to avoid trying to prove yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I call them brittle leaders or fragile
Mm.
leaders where, and, we've all had leaders like that where, they'll say something and then you see them look at, like, how did that go down? Or just there's a kind of bit of a frantic energy
Yeah.
or a panicked energy behind them as they go about their day to day. And yeah, no one gets it right all the time. But I think provided you have got, enough sort of basic skills there in the first place, then layer that on top with the curiosity, with a bit of um, malleability, resilience, and then you don't have to be afraid that people are going to disagree or worried that you'll be challenged because, you just generally want the right thing to happen.
Better outcomes, isn't it? Like all round, it's like such a better way of looking at things. Okay. So, what would be your top tips then? If you were going to say, we've talked about practicing things, and I think that's a really lovely tip. Are there any other things that you would bring into your conversation with a leader who's really struggling with empathy?
Well, I think what can happen is that leaders really want to kind of solve every problem for people or shield their team from the realities of life. Like, things are, in some places there are harsh conditions at the moment,
Yeah.
even if it's about the rate of change, that in itself is really harsh. And it's important for leaders to have some boundaries, I would say, because it doesn't help if you've got somebody who is struggling, like a team member, and then the leader takes all of that on to themselves. Then you've got two people who are struggling, which isn't necessarily a better thing. So I think boundaries are so important, believing that people can help themselves. So kind of understanding what resources are available or where you can point people to um, as needed. And then also this idea of kind of feeling for people versus feeling as people. So what I mean by that is if somebody's going through a tough time, I could say, well, I'm going to experience what you experience and I'm going to feel everything you feel. But again, that's going to debilitate me and make me less capable, to do my job and to support others. So instead, feeling for somebody, okay, that's too bad that you're experiencing this. How can I support you without me taking on all of that emotional load
Yeah.
myself? So I think that distinction is really important. And sometimes it's hard for leaders to kind of get because they feel callous or they feel like, well, I should be going through what they're going through. But is that supporting? Is it helping the world? Is it helping the person? Not necessarily. So yeah.
I want to fix it. But sometimes people need to feel their feelings, don't they? And they need to like be in it, and that's okay too, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And you can use the feeling of the feelings as long as you don't stay there. So
Mm.
you might use that as a catalyst to kind of take some
Yeah.
action or as a, oh, okay, yeah, I get how they're feeling, or it's a way to connect with the other person. I understand what you're going through. This is this and this. But then you've still got to have enough resources and enough, ability to kind of do something about it, even if it's only being compassionate versus just staying in that place and feeling those feelings with the other person.
It's really great, and that connection as well that you touched on there around the how the empathy of the leader as well, so how they can encourage like their team's empathy towards them. I think that's a really lovely way of looking at things as well, and that needs leaders to be able to be okay to say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this today. Can I get some help here?" And that builds trust and confidence in the team as well, doesn't it? When that both goes both ways.
Yeah, very much so. And I was talking to a client the other day, and they were talking about a senior leader at their organization who was very ill and had to take some time off work. And the leader was very clear, this is what's happened to me. This is what's going on. And people really kind of rallied behind that leader because you realize that this is a human being here and that we're all human and this allows me to I can be compassionate towards myself and compassionate towards this leader too. So yeah, we don't all have to, present just this really strong face that we've got no weakness.
People respond to that humanity, don't they? In a way that they don't to a robotic kind of approach to things. And yeah, I think we've got to have more faith in people in terms of being able to be open about really what's going on and then creating that environment for that to work. So that's lovely. Thank you so much for all your lovely insights. Where can our viewers, audience find you?
I guess the best place is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can find me at Shola Kaye, or my website, which is sholakaye.com. But yeah, either one, you can sign up for my newsletter or just reach out and say hello on LinkedIn. I would love that. So yeah, thanks for the
I love
opportunity.
Shola's content and the things that you post and stuff. So I fully recommend that you go and follow Shola. So please do that. We'll put those links as well in the comments so people can find you really easily. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights on empathy. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks for the invite, Anwen. Take care.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Purple Sky Thinking for Leaders podcast. You'll find all the resources and the links that we mentioned down in the show notes. If you love this episode, why not share it with somebody else in a leadership role who you think would find this useful? If you haven't already, I'd love for you to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if we've earned it, why not leave us a 5-star review? I'm Anwen, your host, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the Purple Sky Thinking for Leaders podcast very soon. Bye for now.